Larry's jaw dropped. He looked at them for a long 5 seconds, his brain clearly rebooting. Then, a slow, predatory grin spread across face. Dripper, you dog, you absolute brilliant dog. You used the gay roommate bit to get the girl. I always knew you had a bit of Dallas in you. It wasn't a bit, Larry, Janet snapped. It's real. Of course it is. It's the best long con I've ever seen. I'm proud of you, pal, truly. Larry walked over and slapped Jack on the back, nearly knocking the wind out of him. Well, that changes everything. No hygienist for you. But hey, does she have a sister? Because I'm still available. Chapter 20. The unscheduled inspection. The bliss was short-lived. On Saturday morning, while the apartment was still filled with the scent of Jack's famous sourdough pancakes, the phone rang. Janet answered it. Her face went from rosy to pale in 3 seconds. Mother? Yes. No. It's a wonderful surprise. You're where? The airport? She hung up and looked at Jack, her eyes wide with terror. My parents. They're here. They're taking a cab from LAX. Jack nearly dropped the spatula. Your parents? The ones from the Midwest? The ones who think Santa Monica is a den of iniquity? The very ones, Janet said, frantically starting to clear the table. They think you're my very nice, very platonic roommate. They don't know about the cowboy. They don't know about the truth. And they definitely don't know that my roommate is currently wearing my favorite bathrobe. Jack looked down at himself. He was, indeed, wearing Janet's silk robe. Right. Emergency. Cindy, get the boggle! Hide the flowers! The next hour was a whirlwind of frantic cleaning and character reassignment. Janet's parents, Roland and Martha Wood, were the salt of the earth if the salt was extremely conservative and prone to judging people based on the length of their sideburns. Janet, darling, Martha Wood exclaimed, stepping into the apartment and immediately sniffing the air for the scent of marijuana. It's so good to see you. And the apartment, it's so colorful. Roland Wood, a man whose handshake could crush a walnuts, looked Jack up and down. And you must be Jack, the one who cooks. That's me, sir, Jack said, now dressed in a sensible sweater and slacks, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. Would you like some tea? Or perhaps some very mild herbal infusion? Coffee. Black, Roland grunted. The afternoon was a slow-motion car crash. Martha kept asking Jack about his interests, and Jack, terrified of slipping up, kept talking about his collection of vintage buttons. Roland spent most of his time looking at the love seat, as if trying to calculate the mathematical probability of 2 young women and 1 man living together without a scandal. So, Jack, Martha said, leaning in, Janet tells us you're very artistic. Oh, yes, Jack said, his voice trembling. I love the arts. I love the theater. I love knitting. I'm currently working on a very large tea cozy. Janet closed her eyes, praying for the floor to open up. The breaking point came when Ralph Furley, unaware of the visitors, burst through the door, wearing his disco contest outfit, a sequin jumpsuit that looked like it had been stolen from the set of Saturday Night Fever. Jack, Janet, look at me. I'm a disco inferno, Ralph shouted, doing a clumsy pirouette. Roland and Martha Wood stared at him in horrified silence. Oh, guests, Ralph stammered, his sequins jingling. I didn't know we were having a party. Are these your parents, Janet? They look like they could use a drink. Jack, get the bourbon. Roland Wood stood up, his face a deep shade of crimson. Janet, I think we need to have a serious talk about your living arrangements and your landlord. Jack looked at Janet. He saw the old fear returning to her eyes, the fear of disappointing the people she loved. He looked at Ralph, who was currently trying to hide behind a floor lamp. He looked at the wildflowers on the table. He realized then that the only way to save the apartment and their relationship wasn't another lie. It was the same thing that had saved them from Bart Furley. He walked over to Janet and took her hand. Mr. Wood, Mrs. Wood, Jack said, his voice steady. There's something you should know. I'm not just Janet's roommate, and I'm certainly not a knitter of tea cozies. He looked at Janet, and she nodded, her hand tightening around his. "I'm the man who loves your daughter," Jack said. "And I think it's about time you got to know the real Jack Tripper." The silence in the room was so thick you could have sliced it with a butter knife. Martha Wood gasped. Roland Wood slowly, very slowly, sat back down. "Well," Roland said, his voice sounding like gravel, "I suppose that explains why the sourdough pancakes were so damn good." The afternoon didn't end in a fight. It ended in a long, difficult, and surprisingly honest conversation. Roland and Martha didn't leave happy, but they left understanding. And as the cab pulled away from the curb, Jack and Janet stood on the balcony, watching them go. "You okay?" Jack asked. "I'm perfect," Janet said, leaning head on his shoulder. And as the Santa Monica sun began to set, casting its bruised purple glow over the apartment, they knew they were finally done with the games. The cowboy was gone, the safe roommate was a memory, and for the first time in a long time, the air in apartment 201 was clear. Chapter 21. The Scent of Change. The weeks following the departure of the Woods were surprisingly calm. Roland had sent a postcard from Des Moines with a picture of a cornfield and a single sentence. "The coffee was decent, but tell that boy to watch his seasonings." It was as close to a blessing as Jack was going to get. In the apartment, a new rhythm had established itself. Jack and Janet no longer had to hide their morning kisses, though they still tended to keep things modest in front of Cindy. Cindy, for her part, had become something of a ghost. She was always heading to practice or meeting a friend, leaving the two lovers to navigate their domesticity in peace. "It feels strange," Janet said one evening, looking at the spot where the Spanish textbook used to sit. "No more Austen, no more Spanish, no more secret codes. It feels like we're adults," Jack said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Boring is good," Janet whispered, leaning back into his warmth. But excitement had a way of finding Jack Tripper. At the bistro on the pier, Jack was no longer just the new guy. He had been promoted to sous chef, and the head chef, a temperamental Frenchman named Maurice, had begun to rely on Jack's ability to turn a simple vinaigrette into a symphony of flavor. "Tripper," Maurice barked on a busy Thursday night. "The critic. He is here. Table 7. He has ordered the sea bass. If it is not perfect, I will throw you into the Pacific." Jack felt a jolt of adrenaline. The critic was none other than Sebastian Thorne, a man whose reviews could make or break a restaurant in a single paragraph. "I've got it, Maurice," Jack said, his hands moving with practiced grace. He didn't think about Thorne, he didn't think about the pressure. He thought about the sea, the salt, and the way Janet looked when she was happy. He let his intuition guide him, searing the fish to a perfect golden brown and finishing it with a delicate lemon caper reduction. As the plate went out, Jack felt a strange sense of peace. Chapter 22. The Critic's Crucial Crust. The following Sunday, the review appeared in the Santa Monica Gazette. Maurice was the first to see it, bursting into the kitchen with the newspaper clutched in his trembling hands. "Listen to this," Maurice shouted. The sea bass was a revelation, a delicate balance of acidity and butter that spoke of a chef who understands the soul of the ingredients. The bistro on the pier has found a new voice, and it is a voice worth listening to. The kitchen erupted in cheers. Maurice hugged Jack, a brief, prickly encounter that smelled of garlic and expensive cologne, and announced that Jack would be heading the weekend specials from now on. "You did it, Jack," Janet cried when he told her that night. She had bought a bottle of the good wine, not the stuff they usually had at the Beagle, but a vintage red that actually had a cork. "We did it," Jack corrected, clinking his glass against hers. "And I wouldn't have pushed you if I hadn't seen how much you loved it," Janet said softly. They sat on the balcony, the sound of the ocean, a rhythmic backdrop to their shared success. The 1970s were coming to a close, and the world was changing. Disco was fading, the economy was shaky, but inside apartment 201, something solid had been built. Chapter 23. A Night at the Disco. While Jack and Janet were celebrating professional milestones, Cindy Snow was preparing for a milestone of her own. The disco contest at the community center was tonight, and she and Mr. Furley were the dark horses of the competition. "Mr. Furley, you're stepping on my toe again." Cindy giggled, adjusting her spandex leggings. "It's not stepping, Cindy. It's syncopated impact," Ralph said, sweating profusely in a lime-green polyester suit that seemed to vibrate under the fluorescent lights. The community center was packed. Larry Dallas was there, acting as the self-appointed MC, and a crowd of neighbors had gathered to see the spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Larry's voice boomed through the speakers, "give it up for our next contestants, the Dynamite Duo." The music started the driving beat of Stayin' Alive, and Cindy and Ralph took the floor. It was a sight to behold. Cindy moved with the natural athleticism of a former cheerleader, while Ralph moved like a man who had seen Grease 20 times and had decided to incorporate all the moves at once. He spun, he dipped, nearly dropping Cindy in the process, and he ended with a dramatic split that resulted in a very audible tearing sound from his trousers. The crowd went wild. They didn't win the first prize, went to a couple of teenagers from Venice Beach, but they won the Spirit of Disco Award, which consisted of a plastic trophy and a $10 gift certificate to a local wig shop. "We were robbed, Cindy," Ralph said later, pinning a safety pin into his pants. "But we were the heart of the show." "You were great, Mr. Furley," Cindy said, her face flushed with excitement. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like a third wheel. She felt like a star. Chapter 24. The morning after the moonlight.